That's all right. We can keep talking about it.
Yeah, we will.
That's all right. We can keep talking.
Oh,
Hey, everybody. Welcome tonight to a new episode of Wizards of the Couch. Thanks for joining us tonight. First and third Monday of every month is when you can find us here on twitch.tv/Wizards of the Couch. For everybody who's going to be in chat tonight, we hope you'll participate in an ongoing discussion we've had about design, but this specifically tonight, it's going to be about monster design and how you create challenging foes and challenging monsters to throw against your players in a variety of scenarios. And we'll be joined tonight. Obviously, we're joined tonight by Wolfgang Baur. He is the head monster. He's one of the chief monster instigators over at Cobalt Press.
Hey,
and for those of you who've been living under a rock or stump for the last 3 or 4 months, there's been kind of a building anticipation for the new Tome of Beasts. If you're not aware of this book, I own both types of both versions of this book, both the huge version and the new tiny pocket edition, which is so great. And I'm going to want to ask Wolfgang if there's going to be a pocket edition of Tome Beast 2, because that would be the jam. So
save the question.
Just a real quick warning for everybody out there. It's an adult show. So we do a little cussing, we do a little drinking, but in general, we're just here, a little bit. We're just here to have a good time tonight and discuss specifically monster design. I'm sure it'll wander all over the place as it usually does. I'm Danny Grimes. I'm a professional GM. I run Call of Cthulhu Masters tournaments at Gen Con and various other conventions. I'm also a graphic designer, a terrain maker, and a cartographer. Right over, I don't know where anybody is because I don't see the Twitch stream.
Above you.
Is Matt, otherwise known as KC Rift. He is the owner-operator of Cobalt Con in Colorado, which we were just talking about and disparaging before this. No, we were just breaking balls. He is the top Raven at Blackwood Society and also the Grand Poobah at WizCo Games. Matt, what are you drinking?
I'm glad you asked, Danny, because this evening I'm going to crack open my Cherry Chocktabulous from Rogue.
Nice.
Yeah.
did I pick up a Scottish accent when you were discussing that? Like, did that happen?
That's the Caber Toss this wee lad thing. I can get it whenever I'm introducing my beers now, apparently. But this is the milk stout with natural cherry and chocolate flavors.
Sounds delicious.
I tried to make that as American sounding as possible.
Sounds lovely. Somewhere also on this screen is Brian. I see that guy at every convention, Berg. A reputation that he's going to live up to again in 2020. We're just listing all the conventions, including Cobalt Con, that he will be at. He is an author, a game designer. If you've been to conventions to the dealer area, you've seen Brian many times. He's the director over at Total Party Kill Games. And around here, he kind of kicks us all in the ass to move things down the road. Brian, what are you drinking?
Well, I'm starting with Blue Moon, but then I'm going to switch it up and dig into the Fat Tire. So,
right on. And last but not least, Jimmy Duffy, Chief Reject at Praetor's Reject Twitch channel. He also keeps the lights on around here and makes sure that all the tech runs. He runs multiple streams on Twitch every month. He's rumored to be a good friend of Lord Gazumba. There are many rumors and tales that are told about Jimmy Duffy, and you can find out all about them if you can buttonhole him at GaryCon coming up to the end of March.
There are many a stall that has rumors about him.
Yeah. You can find out a lot about Jimmy by just reading the sides of bathroom stalls. That's totally true. So, Jimmy, what are you drinking? As if I have to ask.
Oh, no. Today it is a clear beverage of water. So I did not go to the store tonight. So.
All right. We typically look to Jimmy to hold up the Shiner Bock tradition, being a good old boy from Texas.
Sorry.
But
not tonight.
I guess tonight it's going to be water.
He failed. So move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also starting with water tonight, but we'll be moving on to some lovely Irish whiskey at the midpoint. Wolfgang, welcome once again.
Thank you.
This, what do you even call this?
Ooh.
Like the four of us are like an encounter that you would design if you wanted to slash irritate or bore people. So hopefully you're gonna bring some energy to this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
What are you drinking?
CR8 1/8 monsters. Yeah.
All right. What I'm drinking is Reverend Nat's hard cider,
Oh,
which is,
yeah, all right.
hey, Washington's a big apple state. So
Right
this is
on.
good stuff. And their logo is, or their motto, the apple's deepest purpose realized.
So heavy.
Indeed.
It's very West Coast.
I love me some cider as well. We'll have to compare notes post show. Which brings up something I just want to quick mention. After the show tonight, there will be a controversial last call.
Dun, dun, dun.
The mainstreaming of D&D. What does it mean for you? So we'll get to that and other hefty topics at the end of the show. But right now, Wolfgang Baur, publisher at Kobold Press, maker and creator, along with other talented people, of Tome of Beasts 1 and the Hero's Handbook. He's won a ton of awards. He's worked a lot of places, but I think the place he's done his best work is his own press. So let's start just talking about monster design, right?
Sure. Yeah. I've done a lot of it. I did it in second edition when those creature compendiums were like loose leaf sheets that you would put in a 3-ring binder.
Mhm.
Some of the older gamers will remember. Oh man,
yes.
it's a horrible format, but I did some.
Oh, like such a great idea in planning, I'm sure.
Right. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and by the end of it, everyone hated it.
There was that one guy in the meeting who said, remember, we have to reinforce the holes. And no one paid attention to him.
No one listened.
It's in a binder, guys.
The binder guide, you need the reinforcing kind. Shut up, Chet.
But Chet's been my nemesis since then.
Just so you know, the whole episode's going to be like this. Just let it happen.
But if I've learned anything about monster design, it's never the monsters you think that are going to be the hit that are the hit, right? Like you can win with goofy stuff. There's a Planescape monster I wrote for Planes of Chaos called the Armonite, which is basically a demonic centaur. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. It was fine. It was second edition. Anything goes. And then
I remember the Armonite.
Yeah, well, they brought it back. Which new hardcover is it in?
Wasn't that a Planescape guy? Wasn't he in a...
It was in Mordenkainen's.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, really?
And I'm like flipping through and I'm like, hey, I know this guy. Why'd they pick him? I have no idea. Somebody else liked it and said, let's bring it up to 5e. In the Creature Codex we did a couple of years ago, one of the backer monsters was the Swollbald, who is kobold. And the art is just totally buff. And it's a kobold who's not the skinny... Yeah, he's not the 98-pound weakling. He's the gym rat kobold, right? And yes. And so everyone loved the art and loved the idea of a kobold who was buff. And before you know it, we're getting, people saying, where's my T-shirt?
Yes.
And,
this is the future that I hope for Crocobot. This is the
Crocobot may be a hit, right?
Crocobot may be a hit. You never know.
May not.
So step number 1 of monster design is don't just design one, volume counts. If you do 50, your chances of something being a hit is better.
Yeah, I think that is for sure true. That is for sure true.
And usually it's your first idea that's lame and your 50th idea that's genius, but sometimes it's somewhere in the middle. The other sort of basic rule that I throw out at monster design seminars is make sure if it's an opponent monster that it is in some manner terrifying. The Shining Children I did for Pathfinder a few years ago are basically Cthulhu's little babies who are all on fire and want you to be on fire too.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And so you meet them and they're not really cute because they're on fire. And their mechanical gimmick is just lighting stuff up, right? They're all little pyromaniacs and Doesn't matter whether you're wearing metal, leather, or nothing. You're going to catch fire. Which, oddly enough, players don't like their characters to be on fire.
That is weird.
I know. How is that? You know, they like setting other stuff on fire, but when you set them on fire, it seems unfair.
Just revenge for all those, inns and stuff that they've burned down.
All that flaming oil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all those fireballs.
We have such a rich history in 5th edition of really like old school Greek monsters, classic, what we would consider like classic monsters from that first age of D&D. And then all the other stuff that has been created. I mean, I think a lot of people fresh to 5e who only have the 3 core books or maybe only really know that that repertoire, there's a lot to gain from seeking out these other sources of stuff because it gives you a lot of opportunities to do something kind of new and unique that people haven't seen yet.
Yep. I mean, Cobalt Press loves to mine folklore. With Tome of Beasts, the first one, we went heavy on the Fae in the darkest way we could imagine because there weren't a lot of Fae in the monster manual. And we had a bunch of adventures featuring them, and we did Lords and Ladies, who the design concept there was demon lords exist, archdevils exist. Why are there no Fae equivalents of the otherworldly badass who will kick your butt or trick you into, So we did 5 or 6 of those, and they were quite popular along with all their minions and some supporting adventures. And we didn't know how it was going to go, right? Like, if you say to somebody, I want to do a whole lot of Fae in your new monster book, first reaction might be, why? But if you do them in a way that's compelling, and they kind of tie together and you give them goals and legendary actions, suddenly it's the Bear King, and he's got a whole bunch of story hooks built into the design. And people gravitated to it, and now they've spun off fan-based adventures on some of these.
That's great.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just taken a different direction, right?
Yeah, I like sometimes when you present these suites of monsters, like you've done with the Fae or the Ghoul characters, what you're kind of playing to a couple of different audiences there, and GMs may not even perceive that they're part of a different type of audience. So I'm a GM, if you haven't met a lot of them, then you kind of think that that's what it is, however you do it. But suddenly you can have like one-off encounters with a lot of these things that are created, but you can also create whole story systems based on the interplay of this suite of characters, which I think that's a pretty slick way to go for that other kind of GM who wants to create more of a tapestry type story.
Like if you did a kingdom of ghouls.
Yeah, that's the Empire of the Ghouls is in pre-orders now. Funny you should mention it, Brian. It ships in April. The 300-page Underdark Kingdom of the Undead, and I love it.
Oh, that sounds epic.
Yes.
One of the things that so putting those suites of monsters together, like Danny was saying, for me, it kind of takes out some of the guesswork and puzzle matching when you're trying to make an adventure. If you've just got this whole suite of similar things, they're all different, but they all have a theme. I think that goes a long way to helping you create the adventure as well.
Yeah, you can mix them up by level or alignment or personality. I think it goes back to the origins of the game, right? Like, we don't think about giants or dragons as necessarily a suite of monsters, but like before that first edition monster manual, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think giants were just big and ugly, right? Like, there weren't hill giants, frost giants, fire giants in mythology, and there weren't red, blue, and green dragons. It was just dragons like Smaug. And so part of the genius, Gygax and others said, let's make a suite out of them so you can hit every level.
Right, and I think that's the beginning of the gamification of it too, where there's now going to be fire effects and acid effects and frost effects. So you're going to need those capabilities to be in your monsters. So the perfect example, on both ends, you got dragons on one end, they're very specific, and you got things like the Beholder, which who knows what the fuck that thing is going to do to you at any given moment, because it's got so many weird things.
Yeah, the Beholder is such a D&D monster, and such a weird one. I love how weird it is, frankly. And it's one of the things I love looking for. I ask designers this for Toma Beast too, is send me your weird aberrations and your dungeon monsters, the freaky stuff that doesn't make sense in any normal ecosystem, right?
Right.
And it's hard to come up with
monster, a real monster. Yeah, yeah.
It is hard. It's very difficult. I rack my brain all the time trying to think of what's the next, almost that exact question. What is the next beholder? What's the weird, freaky thing you come up with that's going to have such an impact? And it is remarkably difficult.
You see,
I mean, some of it's visual, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. But you were going to say, Brian?
I think it's funny that you mentioned that, because we were having a discussion not too long ago about the wonder of D&D when we were kids, right? So much of it was based on the fact that you didn't know what this strange, crazy thing did, right? Like the first time you encounter a mimic, the first time you encounter a beholder, right? There's a legitimate wonder that blows people's minds when they first encounter that. And so how do you capture that lightning in a bottle and bring it forward to today, creating a new monster where 40 plus years of gamers aren't like, oh yeah, of course that's what that is. How do you come up with something truly new and unique these days that really wows people?
That's just an upside down beholder with tentacles instead of eye stalks.
This beholder flies upside down. Its tentacles.
It's got 6 tentacles.
Oh, not yeah.
It's completely different.
I will say, I totally remember looking through Monster Manual, the first Monster Manual, the Fiend Folios, and immediately like latching on to things that I'd never even dreamed of before. And I even back then started making my own or imagining my own backstory, so that what the mythos and the background of those creatures. And yeah, it's just difficult. Like I say, it's difficult to come up with something that compelling now.
Still possible, right?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I mean, look at Ogre Pete.
Yeah.
Well, for part of Ogre Pete, no.
Matt's going to be on that all night. That's going to be his drop phrase.
I've seen. Now that I've seen the art, I can never.
I've got preview so far. That's my favorite preview out of the new.
I mean, so far. that did wow us.
Well, like I said, art matters, right? Like visuals really matter. And so I guess I'd argue, if you're going to be a monster designer and you're going to spend the time to craft the mechanics and the stats and balance it, and you're going to spend time on the juicy lore that makes everybody say, oh yeah, this thing's going to be interesting, then you should probably spend a bunch of time writing an art brief, right? What does it really look like if you want the artist to capture what it is you have in your head?
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
But how do you write an art brief? That's the question I get from some designers who I think don't get asked. I don't know. Some companies may not ask for it, but Cobalt Press does, right? If you're a game designer and you've got something in your head, we'd like it to be close.
You just stepped all over my question. Bummer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hit me with the question.
Well,
Jimmy, you can hang up now.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, because I want to know but what's the process that, you're looking at, the visual design aspects of creating that and bringing it to life, because then, that's then the book side, but then I'm always putting the questions together on the VTT side, the technical side. Then, how does that translate? Is there issues that you deal with when you're going to make the pawns that you're now putting out with your book, and the tokens that are on the board, and how those are going to mesh well between the book and the token side?
That is such a great question for my art director who's not here. I mean, really, it's a graphic design problem and an art direction problem, and Wizards of the Coast is really good at this, right? Like, they bring in artists for concept rounds and they just brainstorm stuff, and they'll do 50 sketches of what the Illithid should look like in the new edition. Cobalt Press can't fly in artists from all over the world, so we just have them mail us sketches.
Well, and Nightheart, you're right, and minis. When now I want to take that off the pond, let's go to the physical board, and there's the gamers who have the physical minis. But then apparently we need to book the art director.
We'll get Mark in here.
Mm-hmm.
He's elusive. I mean, good luck, but
I get that. You know, Jimmy brings up an interesting thing. God, there's so many questions firing, and we will actually get to our official questions at some point.
That was my official question. I'm out. Thank you.
Two things. One, the reason you seek out a person like Wolfgang and his work is because even with all that stuff out there, and even with the mystery of seeing the beholder for the first time, you're still, it's a known quantity. People have T-shirts with beholders on them, like you've seen it. You know, it's like you can't escape it in D&D. So when you get a hold of a book like Tome of Beasts 2, Creature Codex, you can surprise your players with stuff that they've never heard of yet. You know what I mean? Like, it's coming into the consciousness rather than being this well-established long-term thing. I think it's a lot more fun to throw those interesting things at players.
Yeah, the whole point of Tome of Beasts was none of this is recycled, right? It's all new.
Right.
D&D players don't know any of it. We could have gone and done a whole bunch of ogre variants and orc variants and hobgoblin, but you know, those are interesting to a point. We actually did it with ghouls, but your ghouls are not. They're not standard.
Sort of. You did, yeah.
Yeah, we kind of put a big load of spin on the ghouls. So, but I mean, for the most part, we said no. We hit or miss. We want it to be new, and that was a challenge both for the artists and for the designers. And I think we nailed it with Tome of Beasts, and I think we got a little better at it with Creature Codex on the mechanics side, and certainly on putting the book together side, the layout side.
Well, just
that was a heavy side. Wow.
Well, layout on a book this size is enormous, and proofreading. Oh my God. Those aren't the interesting parts of game design. Those are the parts that are graphically interesting, right? Or usability. You want the page layout to be really clear and easy to read when you're passing around giant 2-liter bottles of soda that you don't,
Right. Guys, where are the Cheetos?
Yeah, exactly.
This is the perfect opportunity before we roll on even further and deeper into these uncharted monster design waters. Your Kickstarter is up and running right now for Tome of Beasts 2, and I want to encourage everybody in chat and everybody who's eventually going to see this on YouTube to check out this Kickstarter. It is the good stuff. Like, I was a convert about 2.5-3 years ago to some of the original books, which I still use almost exclusively in my 5e games, just because people just don't see it coming. which is the best part. So let's talk real quickly about where they can find that, though, Wolfgang. It's on Kickstarter.com, but
and it's Tome of Beasts. Oh, links in chat. It's Tome of Beasts 2. All right.
No, please say it.
No,
say
not
it again.
to you, Wolfgang. That's to Danny. I've got to,
Oh, all right.
Don't worry about it.
It's Tome of Beasts 2. It's on Kickstarter now. It ends, what is it, the 21st of February. So you got a couple weeks left.
So they just can go to Kickstarter. They can search for
Tome of Beasts 2 or Cobalt Press.
Or Cobalt Press.
And everybody who pledges at least $25 can submit a monster of their own and might see it published. Get paid and see it published.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Right on. That's another thing that's nice about publishers who are successful and do good work is that they pay the people that work with them.
Of course.
In an industry that has a reputation sometimes that's not so great in that regard, I'm happy to say that that I am friends with some people who are stand-up publishers who do the right thing and they really work with their teams. So just a shout out to publishers. And also, real quick, to our patrons, everybody out there who has been supporting us, thank you so much. You're keeping the lights on. Folks in chat, too, thanks for subscribing to the channel.
I think Anna's on, and I saw Jeff on. I think that was... and I apologize. I'm not ignoring anybody, but I can't seem to log into Twitch. So I'm watching the chat, but I can't chat.
I'm going to nominate this for our hashtag of the evening.
We were talking about politics.
Load of spin. Yeah, who can explain the flump? Just who can explain that? I mean, that's a perfect example, Wolfgang, of who fucking knew.
It is, and I think there were a lot of good pharmaceuticals in the 70s.
I would imagine.
I think so. Especially from the art director of that particular book.
Artists are notorious for this, but
Yeah,
it's like a plate
designers
with
too.
spaghetti hanging off of it, and then it's got two eyes with meatballs on top. Yeah,
It's
I
like
can
a
see it now.
pancake.
no, the eyes are more meatball-y. No, more meatball-y.
That's
It's
fun.
starting to look really disturbing. Good. That's where we want it. Yeah.
Want it to look creepy, but it's good aligned. What?
So everybody has a different way of designing monsters. I certainly don't do it at like some high level. I just come up with a concept. I sketch out as much as I need for the game usually because I'm not necessarily preserving it for posterity. But people who do this for a living, like you, Brian, Casey, just to name a couple, how does it begin? I mean, after the impulse is there, like I'm going to do this, and so on and so forth. Matt, why don't you ask a little bit about that? Because I'm curious about how that.
Well, first of all, I think that's probably the only time I'll be lumped in with Wolfgang as far as game design goes. So I appreciate that nod. But as far you mentioned already that the book, you guys went out of your way to try and create new stuff so that so the players don't see things coming. So they don't know the stats by heart when they are introduced to XYZ monster. But what goes into the initial concept? Like, how are you influenced by movies? Is it books? Is it mythology? You mentioned mythology before, but how does it? How do you go about?
I mean, we try to draw from more than one well so that it's not all the same thing, right? It's 400 monsters in a book. You want a lot of variety in CR, flavor, style, types, terrains. Usually what I do at this point, the monsters submitted by backers are their own separate pool, judged separately. But the stuff I get from the professional designers, I will go to someone who's worked on a previous Tome of Beasts, and I'll say to them, hey, you did a good job last time. Pitch me, 25 monster concepts in a range of this, that, and the other thing. And if I know it's somebody who's good at undead or aberrations or humanoids or demons, I'll say, give me a few of those, because I know you did great work last time. So in that sense, knowing your designers is kind of like art directors knowing their artists, right? Somebody's good at horses, somebody else is good at infernal stuff, and someone else is good at angels. And they'll come back and they'll give me 25 pitches, and I'll say, wow, you got 8 good ones, right? Let's keep those and pitch me 20 more. And then we'll have a giant spreadsheet that is, do we have enough Arctic monsters? Do we have enough aquatic monsters? Do we have any themes in this book? Like Tome of Beasts sort of fell into the Fae theme, but in other occasions we've been more deliberate about it. But the design process really starts with just give me a name or a concept and a couple of sentences. What is this thing? Because I trust them to be able to handle the mechanics, but I need to know, is it something that somebody else is already working on, right? Like, we've got a variant vampire. Okay, well, let's not do that note twice. Doing a bunch of ghouls.
Once
That was fucking awesome.
Yeah. We are a load of spin.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's where it gets started. Somebody has to pitch an idea, and the good ones kind of stick.
Right.
like Flum. Got it. Yeah.
You ever had someone pitch something to you like at a con that actually turned into a written thing and you could never find that person to thank them?
People don't pitch me at cons. It's weird. Either they're intimidated or it's noisy, or they're like, no, I'm shy, right? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
That's too bad, because Wolfgang's like the nicest guy you'll ever meet at a con. Like, I mean, really, let's face it.
I bark at people all the time. I'm mean under this calm exterior.
I don't buy it for a minute.
I feel bad now. I feel like I might have put like a contract out on you now. Like, definitely go and find Wolfgang by the bathroom and like tell him about your monster.
Well, it's
Daddy!
having people tell
You
Brian
did this
about
to
their
me!
character. That's what Brian likes. So,
Oh,
you know.
God.
I was just gonna say, you guys clearly don't go to the same conventions because nobody has any problem going up to Brian.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm
We encourage it.
Hey, I had a so Wolfgang. This will be your first time at CobaltCon this year, but
Yeah.
2 years ago we had a checklist in the back of the program, and it was do XYZ, go to this booth and do something, and one of them was go to the TPK booth, Total Party Code Games booth, and tell Brian about your character.
Ruthless. Just rude.
Wow, that is brutal. And to print it, and not just to put it on a whiteboard, but to like print it in the actual
And you would not be the only convention to ever do that.
So
word's getting out.
It's yeah.
CarryCon next. I'll get in touch with Luke.
Oh my God.
We'll be at the Timber Ridge Water Park.
Actually, maybe do hashtag. So we're actually working on a one-pager for GaryCon in the program. We could do hashtag tell Brian about your character at the bottom, very bottom.
Well, guys, it was a good show. See you around.
taking notes, Matt.
man,
I'm taking notes. Got my post-it notes right here. Okay.
Left turn. All right, I
Better you
apologize.
than me, Brian. Better you
Tell
than me.
me about your character.
Oh, now it's happening on Twitch. Thanks, guys.
Well, we got to get the word out somehow. That's what
Mission
this whole
accomplished.
thing's about. Yeah.
So there I was. It was an 18th level druid.
So,
And he was fighting slums.
so as a
Familiar.
as
In a
a
vain attempt to get back on track.
Yes.
yeah, I'm gonna
Thank you,
keep
Wolfgang.
hammering. as a GM who kind of designs my games as an experience, when I put monsters in, ones I choose or not choose, or mod or whatever, I tend to either let it fall into one of three camps. Like, I'll do things that are like I call it matrixing, where I'm referencing something very specific in the current pop culture. Like let's face it, the Ogrepeed. You know what I mean? Like when
Yes.
people hear that, they laugh inside, but then they're terrified by it. You know, it's perfect, right?
Right.
And there's also the left field monsters that are just zany. Nobody knows what to do.
Dire penguins.
And then the mirrors.
Dire penguins.
What was that?
Dire penguins.
Dire penguins, exactly. And then there's the mirror of humanity monsters, which are like vampires and things like that. They're humanoid, but they reflect some aspect of people. So when you design things like the Ghoul Nation, right? Like, what are the things you're thinking about? What representations of like people are you thinking? Like, how are they different or how are they similar?
Ghouls are the worst possible. All right, I'll go back on this, but I'm going to regret this.
That's what he said when he accepted our invitation to the show
For the second time.
for the second time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A, I can't believe they invited me back, and B, I'm going to regret this. I mean, the ghouls are all about one of the worst impulses, right? They're hideous cannibals, right? They're grave-robbing, flesh-eating monstrosities. So,
Cracked open a cold one.
yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, man.
So a lot of what I was thinking was, how far can I push this before my editor says, just stop, right? Just stop right there. And how far do I want to push it, right? Because it's a whole society, these things, at least the Cobalt-style ghouls, the Empire of the Ghouls. And then I actually had to, at some point, think about how much food do they have to import from the surface for this to work? And I did some rough calculations and said, damn.
Cities are disappearing overnight. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And at some point it becomes obvious that something's horribly wrong in your kingdom and somebody has to go fix it. But yeah, I mean, the design there was really how close to the edge can I run it? How Lord of the Flies can we get?
And on the other side of that line is Rob Schwab going, keep going, keep going.
More.
I have a penis golem. Come on, don't be afraid.
Exactly. How far can I go and maintain the standard that Cobalt Press holds? Because honestly, these books go out to high schools, right? Like high school
right.
play on them, and we try to hit a certain level.
That's fair.
We're not White Wolf. and we're not going to start.
Right.
We're not Rob Schwab, which is unfortunate, but we've already got one, right? So
Yep.
is Mr.
The
Schwab
world can
been on
only
this
handle
show?
one.
He has been on the
Oh,
show.
God.
Yes, he
Excellent.
has.
Oh,
How did
what
I
an
miss
episode
that?
that was.
Yeah.
He taught us how to make toilet
If you're
wine.
ever
Toilet
interested
wine.
in
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, he knows all the things about prison life. How does that happen?
Either a lot of documentaries or a shady past. One of the
One of the two.
Hey, real quick, we've got 2 subs, DM Fat Folks and the James Lewis. Thank you very much for your subscriptions.
The
And
James
we appreciate it.
Lewis.
For supporting the channel. James Lewis being the most unfamous guy in gaming. Oh, he appreciates
That's
it.
his moniker, not ours.
Hey.
That is his moniker.
Thank you for the subs, folks. Next.
So, I guess building off of that, now we're going to have the Tome of Beast 2. So, what is you talked about the Fae kind of evolving out of Tome of Beast 1,
Yep.
So I'm assuming something along the lines of you got a lot of cool Fae and you're like, wow, we're really heavy on Fae. We either put the pedal down or
Right.
we're going to have to cut some of these out. Okay.
Right.
So you mentioned maybe you're a little more deliberate this time around. Can you give us any, even if you don't want to talk about the specifics, talk a little bit about why that decision was made and then kind of how you go about building out a suite of monsters?
Right. So the spreadsheet that does this is
There's a lawyer just off screen saying, don't talk about the spreadsheet.
First rule about spreadsheet.
we don't talk about the Cobalt spreadsheet. I mean, it's got everything in it from like monster name and who's the designer and do we have an art brief and hey, has the art shown up yet and what's the CR and what's the terrain and what's the creature type. It's not the full stats of the monster there, but it's everything sort of that puts it in a bucket, right?
Mm-hmm.
Got
And
it.
so then when we say we want to have enough aquatic monsters, we search by terrain, and if aquatic shows up with 2, we say, oh, right, let's go to one of our designers, or let's pick a few extra aquatics from the backer monsters. And if the CR mix is all messed up, right, then we say, we either bump a monster down or bump it up during development. So we're trying to create, for us, it's sort of a pyramid. There's got to be a lot at the lower levels, and the demon lords and archdevils and even the lords and ladies of the Fae are, 15 super high level, 15 to 20 CR creatures. We can't fill a book with those. It would be a lot of fun, but nobody would use it, right?
Right.
Right.
Whereas the monsters from CR 1/2 to 2 or 3 get used all the time.
Right. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that's kind of how we build it out. We want more at the lower CRs, but with Tome of Beast, we pushed it up above 10 more than the Monster Manual did. And we continued that in Creature Codex. I'm not going to give away the secret sauce of Tome of Beast 2 just yet, but we do have some themes that are coming out, both from the pitches we got from our regular designers, and I'm sure we'll have a couple of themes that kind of gel once all the backer monsters are sorted out at the end of February and March.
They
I'm
may
still
or may
working
not
on my
revolve
solution.
around peds of some sort.
Yes, we're going to have all kinds of peds.
Okay. And transitioning away from the concept of
Number
beads.
5. I'm counting that tonight. How many times that comes up? We're on number 5 now.
Do you have a picture of the ogre pede? I would love to see that.
That's number 6. There we go.
Speaking of which, DM Fat Folks wants to know if he can just order the final spreadsheet when you release version.
I know DJ Fat Folks, and he's not kidding.
You know what? There is an excellent point. Wolfgang, you've got a bazillion, cajillion submissions. You've got a
Yes.
ton of great content for this book, right?
Yes.
For those who are actually paying attention, we were talking beforehand about how huge this book is, right? And there's no way everything is going to fit in this book, right? Because Wolfgang ultimately at the end of the day has a business to run. So what do we do with all that extra content? That's all great to go on your website, right?
Mhm.
Give it to
So-
the wizards.
I'm just gonna, be the LA psychic right here, right now. But I bet if you go to his website after the launch, eventually there will be more of these monsters that show up.
Yeah. That's
And can then be compiled in a PDF for sale later. I mean, just
no, the web editor at Cobalt Press loves you already. Because, yeah, I mean, we do put monsters up on the website. Sometimes it's sneak previews of existing books. Sometimes it's something that somebody sent us, a variant of an existing Cobalt Press monster. And people dig them, right? Like they print them out. They say, when are you going to compile them? When are you going to give us the PC version so I can play the Otterfolk as a player character? And it's all good feedback, right? We like doing the free stuff too.
So my buddy Bruce, who's one of our patrons and runs games with us as well, he wanted to talk just about, like, what is the last source of inspiration, that last monster that you kind of put together and you're like really proud of? So, and like, kind of what was the source of inspiration of that? Not necessarily from Tome Beast 2 even, just like go back.
No, further back. Oh, I can tell you, the Hierophant Lich was...
Ooh, I remember that one.
Yeah, that's from the Creature Codex. And the inspiration there was, man, I really want to sick a Lich on my players, but they're so not ready, right? And I said, if I just crunch the CR down, I'm sure I could, well, terrify them by saying, yeah, it's a skeletal figure and it's spell casting and it commands a bunch of other undead and it lives in a tomb, right? And they're going to go, Lich! And the idea there was, well, wizards are mostly liches. What if a cleric of some death god decided?
Yeah.
No,
Or
I
a
want to live
druid,
forever.
some dark druid.
Right. Any dark divine power that says, you know, I want to go to the afterlife, but your work isn't done here, my lord. I must, you know, I must live on to complete the dark work. And writing that up was a blast. And I think it came out around CR9, which means, okay, it's not a beginning foe, but you don't have to be a killer party at the epic tier to, you know, to have a shot.
Sure.
Plus the illustration is just incredibly good. That was Craig Spears, who also did the cover art on Creature Codex. So yeah, I'm really proud of that one because it took a concept that is out of reach for a lot of campaigns and made it more playable.
accessible. Yeah, that's brilliant.
More accessible.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, not a bad time either to mention again that Wolfgang has a Kickstarter that's running right now through February 21st for the new Tome Beast 2. Ooh. And it is going to have 400 monsters, some of which we've gotten our eyeballs upon, and they are super delicious and awesome looking. But we haven't seen any of the actual verbiage. So, you know, I'm assuming they're just as good on the page as they are in my eyeballs. So go over to Kickstarter.com. You can search for Cobalt Press or Tome Beast 2, and there'll also be a link in the chat. Right, Jimmy?
Already done.
Booyah! And shout out again to all the people that are on tonight. Super appreciate it. We only have Wolfgang for not a super amount longer, so I think we just continue with Q&A. Does that sound good to everybody?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got one for you real quick. I don't know if you've heard this one before, but I look at it like there's basically three ways that you conceive of monsters. You read them, you look at them, and you immortalize them as minis.
Ooh.
So I wonder when people are going to eventually, I say this almost contemptuously, I don't mean it that way, but like when are people going to move beyond the flat mini that's easy to produce and we can PDF-size and do, and start doing team ups with 3D artists, of which there are a gajillion out there, to start producing models that people can print. And you'll sell that Ogre Pede to me as an STL file, or I'll get it as part of the Kickstarter or something like that. Is that coming? Do you feel like that's coming? Or
I feel like it's coming, but 3D models for 400 monsters is a lift.
You'd have to pick.
Right. But some of that's already happened, right? Like, F and Cool Minis is the official licensed metal minis producer. for Tome of Beasts and Creature Codex, and they've done fantastic work. They've also done a bunch of PC races for the Midgard setting. And there is someone who I wish I could remember this artist's name. He does like a model a day.
Oh my.
MZ
Mazer, yeah, MZ.
Yep.
I've got it on the channel. One second, I'll pull it up.
Yep.
Yeah,
He just recently.
he created all the monsters for the first monster manual and just released them for free. Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
Wow.
and he's done a bunch
Wow.
of Tome of Beast monsters. He did.
Mhm.
He did the Void Dragon from the cover art of Tome of Beasts just recently, and he's done the Blemis, which is sort of a headless creature with its mouth and its stomach and its eyes where its chest is. It's all get out.
Here he is. Yep.
And I don't know how many Kobold monsters he's done, but it's got to be a few dozen. And if I could get him to do the whole Tome of Beasts, I'd be thrilled. But you know, he's got a Patreon and takes requests. So if you're a patron, ask him for your favorite monster, like the Hierophant Lich.
Yep. There's his link in chat. So yeah, 42.
So you seem cool about that. Do you think most people would be that cool about it and just say, "Hey, do you want to make the Ogrepede? Rock it out."
Yeah, I mean, 3D printing's coming whether we like it or not, right? Like,
Yeah.
and the minis companies might be terrified, but Kobold Press isn't a minis company. I just want gamers to have the models they want for the table. I mean, the easy way for us to do it is say, here's 300 pawns, thud, and just hand you that brick of really heavy pawns, and that's one way to get there quickly. 3D models are just going to take more time and effort, so I don't know if it's financially viable to do every single monster, but you can do a lot.
It would
Yeah,
cost
Sure.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, honestly, I think I've been quoted like around $300 per sculpt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
that sounds about right.
I mean, you're talking a lot of money. I mean,
Yes. I mean, you could do a Kickstarter just to say, hey, I'd like the Tome of Beasts to be entirely sculpted by this person. He's going to spend a year sculpting it, and we're going to give you all the models. But how many people own 3D printers? Right? I don't have one.
I think a lot of it's more and more every day.
That's true.
It is.
Really good printers are coming on the market now for a very affordable price. So it won't be
$300.
long.
Mhm.
You
And,
can't
you know-
you can't obviously appreciate this, but this is a super detailed mini that I print on a printer that cost me $220.
Oh, it's like cheaper than a laser printer.
Right.
Oh my god, and cooler.
I actually had this conversation today. I had a coworker tell me, he's like, I think most people are like, okay, 3D printers are awesome. I could buy one and I'd make this one thing. But if you're a gamer, if you've got miniatures, like if you play D&D or you play Battletech or something along those lines where it's really miniature heavy game, oh my God. Yeah, duh.
You
Okay,
could,
so
yeah.
go ahead.
No, I mean, you could drop $200 on minis and wind up with not all that much in your hand, right?
Mhm.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Issue. Yeah.
Easy.
Right.
Particularly if you're playing one of the new Fantasy Flight games.
All right, Wolfgang.
Legion. Sorry.
Wolfgang, do you like volleyball?
I guess
You understand the rules of volleyball, right?
I do.
So if I was to spike one up for you,
Oh, okay.
I'm going to let you hit it out of the park here, okay? When is the Kobold Guide to Monster Design coming out?
Oh, not soon enough. But we're working on it.
Okay, awesome. Because that would be an amazing follow-up product
I know.
to this, right?
But also sharing all our secrets, all the math, all those spreadsheets we'd have to jam in there.
You don't have to give away the secret sauce, but I think people would love the philosophy. And
Yes.
all
And
your other design books are great. I mean, stop what you're doing right now. Just get on Amazon.
Just get off Twitch right now.
Yeah.
No,
stop
wait.
watching us.
Hey, whoa, hey,
Wait for our show.
Wait, quick subscribe and then leave.
Right. Cut
Subscribe,
Brian's
then go.
mic. Cut Brian's mic.
Seriously, I think that's a great idea. You should definitely do that.
You're totally right. And I'll tell you more after the show.
Okay, sounds good. So that was my hot seat question. But here's another one for you. I'm sure you're aware of who Matt Colville is. He's yet another designer who's on YouTube, right? Like so many folks are these days. But he seems to have admonished a little bit of the existing monster design in 5th edition, seeking more reactions and bonus actions to kind of keep the players on their toes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you feel about that? Is it good fun for boss and solo monsters, or is it too dangerous when designed for monsters designed to be low threats?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't throw too much of that in the CR1 half, CR1,
Sure.
right? It's like, but I think he's got a point. At the mid and upper levels, it feels to me like some of the design isn't keeping up with party capability, right? Like lair actions and legendary actions and reactions are there for the big bads. But, if it's just the lieutenant of the evil orc empire, maybe he's got something. I think it adds variety to combat. Sometimes it's a surprise for players. And it gives the DM something to say, wahaha, right? Like, if it's swing and a miss, that's not as exciting as, hey, I'm sweeping your whole front rank. I'm making 3 attacks, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I really feel monsters should be, I always go back to this, fun, flavor, and design, right? Because if they are just stats on a page, your players are going to treat them as a speed bump, and that's all the encounter is going to be.
Yeah, no. Speed bumps, I mean, sometimes people just want to throw some dice, but they're not going to remember the speed bump.
Right.
Yeah. Sure. That was good. Mr. Colville knows his business.
Indeed he does.
And he has a very specific business, too. He is not a game designer per se. He's written a book. He's he's a good GM, but he's a YouTube personality.
Right. Very intense YouTube personality.
He's passionate, but his goal is to get an audience to build on social and on YouTube. So it's a little different. But I do like, a lot of his advice is rock solid, and I don't think he's wrong about 5e. All the things you guys said about 5e, I think is pretty much dead on. The thing I've started giving is just a couple of extra reactions all the time, just to keep the pace moving. You slash me, I flick you back immediately, and that has actually helped a lot in the flow of combat, because people aren't just waiting for their turn. They might get smacked at any time. They don't really, it keeps it a little off kilter. So
yeah.
Well,
no, I like those.
Thank you so much for coming to our show twice now. You are our first ever repeat guest.
Really?
Repeat guest.
Wow.
And so it is a dubious honor.
It was easy to lure in, is what you're telling me. I'm
sucker.
I'm gullible. Okay.
I just need some help getting my sofa into this van.
Most people eaten by a couch mimic do not return.
That's right.
But man, we look forward to seeing you again at some future cons. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
We'll interview him at GaryCon.
Yeah.
How about that?
That sounds awesome. Yeah.
With a beer.
All right. I'll see you guys at the show. Thanks for having me.
Right on. Thanks.
Take
care, buddy.
Thanks, Wolfgang.
Take care.
Thanks, Wolfgang. Good to see you, bud.
Bye.
And boom. Oh, and I knew we were going to be messed up because Danny got on late.
Because we're trained professionals?
Yeah.
Why?
Station ID.
Wolfgang got on before you did, and I didn't get to set the overlays.
How about this? No,
Actually, it's not too bad, except Brian and I are swapped.
Yeah, no, I didn't get to change it in time. Now we're good.
I'll just be on at 8:30.
Brian's gone. Now we're good.
I'll just be on at 8:30.
Daniel-san. Damn it.
That was awesome. Little insight into the mad genius of Wolfgang Baur. Plus Ogre Pete, I got to say that word like 7 times.
9 times now?
And then we said Peds. We said Peds a whole bunch of times.
11.
I wanted to talk more about that.
Often you get to talk about the flump.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting. There's a process
Thanks, Nightheart.
that goes into to not only creating monsters, but then the whole other level he takes it to.
Oh yeah.
All together looks so beautiful. I pulled out my Tome of Beasts
Oh, easy.
because this is a beautiful book.
Yeah, man.
This is really well
got
put
it.
together, and it's
I got
just
Codex.
it's killer. And now we're going to get another one, and it's extending my range.
Mm-hmm.
I need to remember to bring paper so I can start writing hashtags. We need hashtag peed.
Hashtag peed. Well, so are we going to hop right into our next segment here?
Back
Or?
to dose.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever.
All right.
Whatever.
What do
is
you
that?
want to do, Jimmy?
No, I'm ready. Fire away. What is Act 2?
Oh,
Oh, easy encounter design and cunning monster tactics.
That's right.
Yeah. How to make it funner.
Funner. Kill them all.
No fun.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll jump into the shallow end of the pool here.
Centipedes.
So I think when you were designing, what happened now?
Go ahead.
Watching chat.
Lewis, yeah.
Oh,
Mr. Lewis.
Scented peed. Oh, James Lewis.
give it to freaking Lewis.
He's quite good with words.
Mm-hmm. Words well.
Yes, he does. All right. So when you're designing monsters, it's very different when you are designing encounters, right? The two are completely separate. But knowing your monster's capabilities and how to design a fun encounter with those monsters is magical, right? Wolfgang we all probably could have talked for hours and hours and hours on this one single topic. So I'm going to give you guys a couple really simple tips, hopefully, to help you out, because not everyone here has been playing, the game for 40 plus years and blah, blah, blah. And, someone out there is probably like, well, I just take up monsters that look like fun and I throw them at the party. That's one approach.
Totally valid. Totally valid approach.
Uh-oh.
No, keep going, Brian. Keep going.
And yet I tell Jimmy that is the wrong approach, and he's just going to kill off players.
Well, hold on. We lost Matt.
No, we didn't lose him. We know where he is.
He's taking a station break.
Yeah, but Danny's all messed up.
I think he's taking an internet connection break is probably what's happening.
So I think the first thing you need to know is what an APL is. And for those of you who are like, what? It's not a military anachronism. It is the average party level, all right? And so if you have everyone on the same level, okay, let's say everyone is level 4. You have 4 level 4 characters. Then your average party level is 4, right? Because the games by default are sort of written for that 4 character party.
My computer just rebooted. It's fine. It's all fine now.
Welcome back. Hey, at least it came back very quickly.
So to speak. Yes.
We were just talking about APLs and the average party level. But let's say you have 6 characters and they're all 4th level. Is your APL 4? No, it's not. You're actually considerably higher. You might be an APL 5 at that point. So your average party's level's power is equivalent to 4 5th level characters. All right. And so that means that you need to challenge your party appropriately. And yet, even though, because now there's, say, 6 of them and their action economy means that they can handle tougher monsters, you can't necessarily throw super high challenge rating monsters at them that would challenge a 5th level party, because they've got the hit points of a 4th level party. So anyway, just keep an eye on that. And if you need to, you can use something really handy like an encounter calculator, which you could find over at Kobold Fight Club. And if you've never been to Kobold Fight Club, first of all, we shouldn't even be talking about Kobold Fight Club, but we are. So do a quick search for Kobold Fight Club sometime, and it'll actually allow you to do all, you input the numbers. It does all the math for you, but it will figure out what your APL is, and it will tell you, okay, here's the monsters. You input a number of monsters. It'll tell you, is this an easy encounter, a medium encounter? Is it a hard encounter? Is it a deadly encounter? Okay. And you know your party better than anybody else as the game master. If they're even more challenging, like they have too many magic items, they're really broken characters, whatever, you can feel free to dial it up, use the challenging encounters, use the deadly encounters every once in a while. But that's a good litmus test for whether or not your encounter design is balanced.
So what about enemy numbers? So
yeah.
How do you factor in numbers when you're talking about APL?
So do you mean for the players or for the monsters?
Monsters.
So again, if you use the encounter the encounter calculator, which you can find in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but it's so much easier to just use it online at Kobold Fight Club or anywhere else. It will allow you to put in numerous monsters. And as you begin to put monsters in, as the numbers begin to eclipse the party members, the challenge rating spikes because the action economy for the monsters becomes so much more. So if the monsters are getting 2 hits to every 1 player, even if the player can do more damage, the monsters are actually more challenging because they can output more damage. The only pitfalls where this kind of occurs is where the challenge ratings break down. So if your monsters have advantage, or like, for instance, if they have pack tactics or they have multi-attacks, be very, very careful when gauging those encounters, because that's sometimes a way where a few good rolls in the GM's favor, you can murder a whole party, because giving an entire group of monsters advantage becomes brutal. Multi-attack, same thing. Just be careful. It's cautionary advice.
Yeah, yeah, and I
Jimmy
think that's one thing. Unless you're Jimmy, and then he'll just kill you. I mean, right. And I think that's one thing that people don't realize. I remember, God, who was it? Somebody was commenting. It's been a while, maybe even a year ago, how little people appreciate the one, like a +1, and if from a mathematical perspective, that's plus 5% difference in your rolls. And when you multiply that across a bunch of enemies like you're talking about, particularly in 5th edition, I think 5th edition for me is probably one of the better ones at
so dangerous
minimizing. Yeah, is it minimizing the party or is it maximizing the number of opponents? But yeah, you're right. I mean, you can, until you get really up there in level, you can still be threatened by a pack of kobolds or a pack of goblins in 5th edition. I think that's great, and that's definitely one thing that people need to consider when you start stacking on +1, +2s. That adds up really quick when you have stuff like you just said, like wolf pack tactics or pack tactics.
Or, heaven forbid, you cast haste on your monsters or something along those lines. It can be very, very deadly very, very quickly.
Right. Something else that somebody was mentioned in chat, I saw flash by. They were talking about just to keep people on their toes. And Wolfgang already talked about this a little bit by just creating new monsters. But one thing that you can also do is take a critter that people will recognize, like a demon, and nerf it to some. It's got a it's got a thorn in its foot, so its CR is lower. So you can still take them off guard, and lower the CR to make it worth their while and keep them on their toes.
And they get to experience those creatures without having to necessarily wait till 8th level, 9th level, 10th level. They can have an interaction with a demon or whatever without having to have it be a world-ending, close the portal or humanity will die type scenario.
Right. And I think, that you bring up a good point. And that's a way that you can make, not that we're talking about that, I guess, encounter design, I suppose, but that's one way that I've found over the years that you can make a campaign arc pretty interesting, is if you have that nerfed demon dude or nerfed big badass enemy at the beginning. They encounter him, and maybe he's doing something else, so he's not paying attention to him when they're at level 2. Level 5, they encounter him again, but he's nerfed somehow. Then level 10, when they finally reach him, they finally beat the bad guy in his full glory. And then over the campaign arc, they've encountered this guy several times at different CR levels,
Right.
And it keeps them intertwined.
Right. So can I add something kind of onto what Brian was just saying there?
Yeah,
Please.
you can say whatever you want, Brian. Left.
Well, I'm just saying, Matt. I don't know if you wanted to go next.
No, go ahead. No.
Okay. So for me, encounter design, which I'm only going to go into for a second here because it bears on monster design. Encounter design for me is the art of creating something like interesting for the players to enjoy and engage with. But I don't want to be surprised by it, right? I want to know what I'm doing, right? And I think a good GM wants to have at least something in their hip pocket. So where I start with encounter design and creating monster tactics, get to know your players. Get to know the characters. And so I make a little cheat sheet at the beginning. I'm never going to be able to parse an entire player character sheet because it's.
Is it a spreadsheet? Can you share it with the group here?
I can't. It's a trade secret. But I make this sheet and I put down the number of attacks they have. I assume they're going to miss the half the time, and the half the time they hit, I assume they're going to do half damage. And I figure out what their top 3 abilities they might use. This guy's always got a fireball online. I know that. And I just make a few quick notes, hit points, whatever it might be. Now I've got a good look at what my monsters are going to be soaking their way into. I know I'm going to get hit by a couple of fireballs. Sure. I know, and when I'm designing, I can't obviously just design or choose monsters that are going to not, be able to escape all of their abilities. Right. I'm still going to put the monsters that I want to put in. I know they're just going to face some challenges. So then when I look at monsters, being a hyper creative person, I never like everything. I never have read a monster where I looked at the whole thing. I was like, I'm running him just the way he is. I always go in and say, he doesn't move fast enough. He doesn't brachiate. He doesn't breathe underwater. He should have that ability, And I'll usually strike something. And then I look at what the capabilities are, what the actual attacks are, what it can do, with the idea of my party in mind, not to take it easy or be extra hard on them, but I just like imagining all the crazy shit that's going to happen when this bunch of armored buffalo come down the corridor and the players have nowhere to go. To me, that's a lot of fun, and it sounds ludicrous, but that's where, for me, the joy comes from, is knowing my player characters and then throwing things at them that they can actually have fun fighting.
Danny, I think that is an amazing point, right? One of the things I also try to do is look at the players. You like you said, their capabilities, but what do they want to do? If that player wants to throw a fireball every round, we'll make sure that there's a few extra mobs, right? Don't just split them all up in order to mitigate his cool thing that he wants to do. Let him have that fun, right? If you have a rogue in the party, guess what? They want to be sneaky. They want to go assassinate that lone guard, right? They want to pick that lock. The cleric wants to turn undead. So that's definitely part of it.
And I think, having just recently run Red Hand of Doom, which I highly recommend, it's hobgoblins. They're militaristic. Yeah. So every decision they make when they're in the game, I think, what would a military person do? Would they be drunk on duty? No. Would they, they...
I'm just kidding.
And I know that when the players come up to the gate, these guys aren't going to be wasted or slovenly or ill-equipped. They're going to be high and tight and ready to fight. So I think all that goes into it.
That's good.
Yes, and I'm just loving all the Crocobot love in the chat. That's great.
I'm really glad that happened. We should ask Wolfgang if he ever wants to be on Whose Monster Is It Anyway? Because talk about mana, just mana dripping down on you.
I'm not even going to go for it.
Who aren't aware what we're talking about, we have another show on Thursday nights called Whose Monster Is It Anyway? Where you, the audience, get to participate in monster design. We've gone 2 shows now. The first one was the Aether Golem. And the second one this week, or last Thursday rather, was the Crocobot, which is part crocodile, part robot. So yeah, tune in same time on Thursdays, and you can help us design. Some critters.
And I think
No
Spike TV is going to pick that
No.
up, right?
Crocopede.
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 No.
Although I did see something in there earlier, Crocopede. Even got in chat. That's fantastic. But it's Crocopede, not Crocopede.
Oh.
Crocopede as in yellow.
I think that's what,
Anyway,
16th time, Jimmy?
I digress. I think Bunnicula, who was that? Bunnicula was talking earlier, so we might have to have a bunny vampire.
There you go.
Anyway, so there we were.
Making
Wizards of
Crocobot.
the couch. So I think for my 2 cents this week is kind of playing on everything we've already talked about, and don't play. DMs walk a fine line between meeting the needs and wants of the players and just playing the stats as written. One of the things that I really dislike about Pathfinder, I'm talking to you, Jimmy. One of the things that I have grown to dislike about Pathfinder is that as you get higher levels, things are just resistant to everything. Like you make a character with a specific, God help you if you play Pathfinder and you make a poison-based character, because past like 7th or 8th level, you are hosed. You never get to use your poison again, as an example. So DMs walk that fine line all the time between making the encounter fun for the players and let them do the actions and the cool Gucci stuff that they want to do versus just outright schwacking them and trying to shut them down because they're the DM and they run the show. So I would say don't run your monsters as a bunch of stat blocks would be my 2 cents for this week. And when you're building encounters, just look at it from a real world perspective, and that everything around us, all the animals that exist today, are there for a reason. They survived their evolutionary tract for whatever reason. They rose to the top of their particular species, and they're there for a reason. And monsters should be considered the same. When you're looking at why are goblins still here or why are flumps still around, they have some sort of advantage that has got them to where they're at, real or imagined, and you should play on those strengths. So specifically when we're talking about bugbears, I think was the example I put in here. Yeah, play on those monster strengths and don't be afraid of things like hit and run. Don't just expect that a group of kobolds or goblins is going to just run out at a party and get slaughtered, because that's not what they
would do.
They didn't.
Realize,
they haven't survived this long just to go out and be slaughtered, right? So I think my example was bugbears for this week. And consider 5th edition bugbears. They've got brute and surprise attack. And just imagine an encounter where you've got goblins hidden off in the woods. The high stealth bugbears are standing on the side. Your party goes past. The goblins engage with their bows. Party is totally focused on schwacking down, playing whack-a-goblin with their maces and hammers and swords, and ready to chop these guys to pieces. And then all of a sudden, a band of bugbears comes in behind them and hits with brute and their ambush attack, their surprise attack rather. So brute, first of all, doubles the dice damage on any melee weapon that they're using, and then surprise attack adds another 2d6. So if you have a group that just ambushes from behind and gets your party, we already discussed earlier that the number of monsters, or rather, players have to be a lot more concerned about any CR worth of monster in 5th edition. And so just imagine a group of bugbears ambushing, and you've got a longsword 2d8 plus strength plus 2d6 damage on the first round and an ambush attack with advantage. Play on those strengths, I guess, is really all that I'm getting at. You don't have to just throw those critters right into the meat grinder. Yeah.
Like to throw onto what Matt's saying, even goblins, even if they don't want to engage a party because they know they'll be slaughtered, well, that party has to sleep sometime, right?
Right.
Or do they? Because the goblins could make sure that they interrupt the party, keeping them from regaining spells, keeping them from taking a short rest, keeping them from regaining hit points and hit dice on a long rest, just by firing a few arrows every hour and running away.
Right. And that's one. Uh-oh, mute.
Annie, you are muted.
but that looks very funny.
What'd you say?
I said I'm imagining those two goblins like at the ambush point going, shoot now. I think they've just fallen asleep.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
I think that's so. 5th edition in particular makes it really easy to short rest and long rest. I mean, there's a lot of options available for players to recover, and you are not, as a game master, obligated to give them any time.
Nope.
What's the most feared? So this isn't probably the same answer for everybody, but one of my most feared modules is Dragon Mountain, and that's why we run it every year at KoboldCon, because those those kobolds do not give you a break. They are on you from the moment you step foot into the mountain.
And clearly we need to interject the brobald.
Yeah, the brobald, swobald. Yeah, brobald.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, we can call it brobald. That's fine too. Yeah, brobald. But yeah, so you're not obligated as a dungeon master, game master, whatever, to allow them to rest in the middle of a dungeon. Think about how many times you've allowed your players to take a short rest, 10 or 15 minutes, in a hallway or in a room that they just cleared. That noise is echoing all the way down everywhere, right?
Duff, are you taking notes?
Yes, I am.
A few. I think one of the things that we probably should do a show on at some point, or at least have as part of the show, one of the segments, is the incredible amount of control the GM has over time in the game. Time is the GM's. It's like when you watch football. I know like half of the people in chat just were like, what's he talking about now? But in football, there's this clock management part of it where you're managing that time. That's really important for GMs, and it's really important for monsters to be able to manage that. Also, you're under no obligation to allow a check.
Right.
I want to try to pick the lock on the door. No. But unless they're a rogue or something, but so many people will just say, well, I'm going to try to pick it. No, I don't have to let you try just because you have a stat. So these are really important things when it comes to using monsters too, I think, is the power you have to line things up the way you want. We just recently had a encounter where I imagined the way in which the monsters would come into the room. First there would be some guards, and if the guards didn't alert anybody, maybe somebody heard something. That person gets inquisitive. They come to the scene. Then a couple of people miss that guy, and they're like, hey, maybe we should go check where George is. And so the monsters come into the scenario continuously. So just as the players are like, oh, we got him, 2 more dudes show up, and that, I think, ending any encounter with a progression of monsters so that, it's not just fighting the bad guy right off the bat. You're working your way up even in one encounter.
Right. I can't count the number of times early on, first, second edition, where it's just a dungeon clearing, an exercise in dungeon clearing. I can't count the number of times that you go into one room, have a huge fight, which probably included fireballs and lightning bolts, walk through the door, and there's another encounter right on the other side, right? And if you are struggling with keeping your players on their toes, the door opens and that other set of mobs just run right in, right, and then add to the battle. I mean, there's certainly no reason to let them get lax, I guess. Ultimately. Right. So just think about put yourself in the shoes of the creature that you are putting your party up against, and utilize their abilities to the maximum effect. And I would also point out, I held this up a second ago. You got 5 torches deep. I'm running two of these modules. We're converting to 5 torches deep. It's an RPG. It's newly published, I think. And I always forget it is. Do they have a name? Does the company have a name, Brian?
Yes. But I'm too many beers in to remember the name of the company. Yes.
Okay. Well, anyway, 5 torches deep. One of the things I love about this game is basically it's an OSR. Yeah, with the internets. It's an OSR bolt-on to basically Clean House on 5th edition.
Publishing.
Sigil Stone. There you go. Bolted on an OSR type feel. One of the best mechanics in that game is resting. And if you're in a dungeon in a hostile environment, it's just assumed that you're not getting a good night's rest. You get 1 hit point back. You may get your spells back, but you get 1 hit point back while you're resting in a dangerous area. If you want to get a full night's sleep and get some more hit points back, you have to pull all the way out of the dungeon, in which there are rolls to also take, you might take damage if you're not being careful. You don't have to role play it, but there's just some DM rolls and checks that, oh, you guys took 15 points of damage trying to get out of the dungeon.
Yeah. Because
and adding that layer of complex, and that's not even complex because the rules are super simple. That level of danger, I guess, is super cool. So if you're going to GaryCon, I'm running 2 of those torches, or
I'll be there.
Yeah, I am stoked. I am stoked to see that. In fact, I'm buying it right now because that sounds awesome. I wanted to ask you about the title too. The conceit is that everybody starts with 6 torches, and now you're 5 torches deep, or why is that?
Yeah, so I think the 5 torches is the average number of players. I think that's 5 torches going down in a dungeon is my guess. But yeah, it is also very and simply resource intensive. So
Right.
you have you've got a value almost like another stat, like your strength, dex, con, and God, I can't remember what it's called now. Jeez, I'm failing.
Things.
But it's like, sup, SUP, supply, and you got a supply stat, and that's what you carry into the dungeon. And once your supply stat's out, sorry, torches go out, whatever. I mean,
Yeah, I'm looking at DJ Fat Folks in the chat. This is something that he should check out too. I think he would super dig this game.
So
I am not 5 beers deep. I am 1 giant beer deep. Thank you very much.
We are in communication with those folks at Sigil Stone, and although they will not be available for an interview, we are going to do a review of 5 Torches Deep and talk through some of their design philosophy. So stay tuned. That's upcoming, not tonight, but in future.
Yeah.
Killer.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about at some point. I'd like to talk about Mothership too. That's one that I just recently found that is really cool as well. So maybe we can have like our favorite, like slim down, pared down, cool system review show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah. So
Cobalt peed. Hey, trademarked.
I'd like to talk about phrasing. Damn it, Lewis.
Cobaltpeed.com.
So what is everybody's just going around Robin? Talk a little bit about the favorite choice monster that you can use almost anywhere. Like it's got to be almost that universal. Like I think of it's not mine, but I think of like a beholder as one of those things you can find it anywhere, doing anything. It's a super genius, super powerful. Who knows what it's into? What's out there for people?
Are you saying besides flumps?
Besides, no. If you've got a great flump story,
No good story began with a flump.
a lot of them end with a flump.
Kristen Soward has he did like undead something flump. It was ridiculous. It sounded really cool for his campaign setting. What was his campaign setting called?
I don't know.
Oh, Seraph, 7 cities, 7
City of Seven
Seraphs.
Seraphs. Yeah.
City of 7 Seraphs. Yeah, like undead something flumps. It sounded pretty hilarious. Yeah,
So
that doesn't answer your question, though, does it?
What's our go-to monster?
Jimmy, what is your go-to? What's your go-to?
Jimmy, what's your go-to?
Wow, that is a great
Fireballs,
question.
I think.
We know what yours is. There's no doubt about that. That's a great. That's a stumper for me. I'm an undead guy, so I'm the boring undead guy. I like, and I wish I like to nerf them more.
So skeletons, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and
All right.
zombie, the typical ones, but I just think that they need they need to be retooled. The zombies,
Which you can do very easily in 5th edition.
yeah, but when you do that though, and then you got players that go, well, that's not in the book, and like, okay, well then you just died. Okay, so
Is that how that works?
That is
how it
also
works. So, especially if we're streaming, don't contradict me on stream. It doesn't work that way. Okay, no.
Yeah, and not to go off tangent, but I think that is one thing we probably should talk about in the future is how much how much the control just generally seems to have shifted to the players. I can't count the number of times I've heard people say, "Oh, that's not how it
Last
works."
call.
Yeah.
Contradicted DMs. Last call. That's coming up in about 5 minutes.
No, that's a good topic for last call, not another last call.
That is a good topic. Well,
What's yours, Brian? What's your monster?
Knolls.
Are cool.
Because
They're cool.
okay, everyone thinks, typical, bestial dog-faced knoll, right? Much like dogs, there can be a million different breeds, right? And so in my campaign setting, the knolls are like Mayan or Aztec bloodthirsty savages, right? Slightly insane, but they're vicious, man. And people should be scared when 10 or 12 of them run up over a hill. Players should not be like, oh, hell, just knolls. Let's fight them. Even with a small challenge rating, they're savage, right? Come on.
Right.
Yeah, I think of them as the anti-hobgoblins. They're not militaristic. They're savage.
Yes. Bloodthirsty.
Yeah, I've got two Myconids and Modrons.
Ooh, Myconid. That's a good one.
I love Myconids. I run a lot of dungeons, so I love creepy, drippy grottos with all sorts of shit that you can you feel like you catch cold in the dungeon more than be attacked. Like you develop a lung disorder. And Myconids are great also for in introducing that like otherworldly mental kind of spooky stuff. And Modrons, because I have yet to figure out how to play a law game, like how you run a game that's interesting, where the things don't change and things are one way and that's it. So they're like a challenge for me. I don't know how I've used them in Planescape, but I would love to run a plane of law game, but I have no idea how that would work. So seems like
anybody else weirded out that they're just dice with arms?
It does not weird me out. I think of them as the original steampunks.
Sure.
They were steampunk before steampunk was big.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody loves steampunk. Just go on Amazon.com. You'll find out.
Yeah. We were just talking about. I just found out about a bar that's a steampunk bar in Las Vegas. I didn't know about, thanks to Phil Stone. Phil Stone, our artist for Whose Monster Is It Anyway on Thursday nights, 9 p.m. this channel.
Artist in residence, Phil Stone.
Yeah, so I'm having a discussion here in chat because I was going to be chatting about the environment in an encounter and all that, but as typical, move through that. But I think we're going to bring that back around either for a topic on the show or we'll talk about it on a blog post. But Frank and Nightheart Gaming, we're talking about the dreaded Lehman's Tiny Hut. Does it have a floor, or is it just a dome?
Ooh,
excellent
interpretation. Okay, and
we need to put a poll out.
There you go. And so, Frank, you're the winner. You get a cookie tonight. Nicely done. Okay.
My wife is a great proponent of Lehman's Tiny Hut, so I'm curious to see what she will say.
But don't forget, I got to pimp it since we're here. February the 15th, 24-hour stream of Greyhawk goodness. So we're going to be bringing Greyhawk around from 1E to 5E across 5 channels, starting at 4 in the morning on that Saturday. I take the 8 o'clock morning to noon slot, and then we move on through the other channels of Wicked Studios, Nightheart Gaming, Lord Gasumba, myself, and Castle Entertainment. And it has got a theme to it. You'll have to come watch to understand what's going on. And
so I know you guys are probably all fans of Greyhawk. All right. Did anybody else know where the name Vecna comes from?
Yes.
No.
It's an anagram from the last name
Ananos. Yeah.
Do you know how disappointed I was when I learned that? Because I hate Jack Vance. I hate Vancian magic. Blah blah blah. Blah. Okay. So one of my favorite villains of all time, Vecna. In fact, I wrote a card in our Geeks vs. Harsh Reality game called Motherfucking Vecna. It turns out was based on motherfucking Vance.
And with that,
So you bring up a couple of really quick things, then we're going to do our station ID out. One, I think what we all have to ask ourselves this year at GaryCon is, are you of the hand or are you of the eye?
Be thinking about that. There may or may not be swag available depending on your selection.
Are you of the hand or of the eye? Where do you fall in the annals of Vecna? So we will leave with that. Yes, we definitely should do a segment in the future about encounters and
interpretation. Yep.
Yeah. So, hey, we have been and will continue to be the Wizards of the Couch. I am joined tonight by Matt and Brian and Jimmy and me, Danny. You can find us every first and third Monday of every month from now until the end of time here on twitch.tv/Wizards of the Couch.
Dun, dun, dun.
You can also find us all over social media, as some of you may well know, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, where you're normally going to find us, Wizards Couch or WizCo Game, if you're over at YouTube. You can find our posts there usually in the following week. Matt just got a massive computer upgrade, and now his computer devours gigabytes of video like a Tarrasque.
Maybe that's what I'll call it, Tarrasque.
Yeah, there you go, Tarrasque. And you can catch our podcasts, all the places, podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, on our site, and obviously over on wizco.games, you can find out what's going on with this whole group. We are going to be at GaryCon.
All of us.
In March. Hey, and when is the Midwest Gaming Classic, Bri?
Ooh, I can tell you here in a sec.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and then at Cobalt Con. Well, Dana, you're not going to Cobalt Con, are you? Are you going?
I am not going to Cobalt Con, but I am going to Gamehole Con. Just got our hotel today.
I did it. I booked mine today too.
So for those of you who are in the Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin area,
that's me.
Oh, yeah. Tarrascapede. Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Gary, stop it. You're banned.
For those of you in the Midwest, northern Midwest area, Midwest Gaming Classic invited us up. We are going to run a ton of games there. And it is April 3rd, 4th, and 5th in Milwaukee. So great beer, great fun, and us, which I don't know how we factor into all that, but it'll be a good time.
I will be running some Shadow of the Demon Lord, as you well know, Brian.
Ooh, I can't wait.
To the game.
So, thank you to everybody who showed up tonight. We really appreciate the audience. Thanks for all the good comments in chat. Thanks to DJ Fat Folks, and who was the other?
James Lewis.
James Lewis.
You wouldn't remember his name because he's the most unfamous man in gaming.
And thanks to all of our patrons as well, appreciating your support. More stuff is coming out. We've got something coming out in February, all sorts of excitement there. So thanks again to everybody. We really appreciate your support. And from the rest of the Wizards, Danny Grimes saying a goodbye.
We'll be back for last call in 6 minutes.
We will.
Last call in
Last
6
call,
Mike.
6 minutes.
Don't go anywhere. Well, do go somewhere. Use the bathroom. Get a beer.
Take that
we'll be
bio
back.
break.